Geoff Mosher, FanRag Sports, covers the Birds, and he joins us now for a look at the Eagles, where they got a big name back on the defensive side of the ball today. Geoff, a lot of buzz about Ronald Darby practicing this week. What level of practice, and do we anticipate that Monday night they could have their top corner back on a defense that's been really good?
Yeah, guys, I mean, it's great to see him back, obviously, for the defense, a key cog to it. They've done an excellent job, Jim Schwartz and the corners, of either scheming without him or just playing at a higher level. Patrick Robinson really stands out, although that's from the slot. He's practicing a little bit this week, but Doug Peterson said the stars would have to align correctly for him to really make it and play in this game. And that doesn't surprise me. I mean, this is the first week of practice. I mean, you don't get your conditioning down while you have an ankle injury. Obviously, you can't run for quite a while, and you can only do so much cardio when you can't run. And you can only do so much strength training when you can't run. So I imagine that they're going to really evaluate him this week. And, you know, if by chance he's one of those Superman healers, and it looks like throughout practice this week he's got, you know, zero concerns or zero issues, do I think that he'll go out there and play, you know, 40, 50 snaps against a really good passing team? I don't. Maybe they'll try to mix him in, perhaps in some nickel package. I don't know. But I would really target the following weekend against San Francisco as a more likely return date, at least a return to where you see Ronald Darby playing at full strength and playing more snaps than just a few.
Yeah, now he was out there on the practice field. Doesn't seem like he had a brace or anything that would indicate that he had such a gruesome injury, which is good. Was he limited or anything, or was he fully participating?
Yeah, we only get to watch the first 10 minutes of practice. So, I mean, it's you know, you don't get an accurate barometer of how much a guy is really doing out there for an hour and a half. I think what Doug said was they were going to kind of test him out, so I'm sure he was limited. Remember, they've got to prepare for Washington, and they don't know what his status is today. So they've got to get Rasul Douglas and Jalen Mills ready as if they're going to be the two outside corners when they play. So to me, I'm sure that they're getting a good look at Darby, and maybe he's running with the scout team a little bit just so, you know, to see what it's like. But I have a feeling that it's going to be really difficult to get three guys prepared to play two spots for a big Monday night division game. I mean, I think if it were me, you know, I would probably, you've done well. I know that stuff can kind of catch up to you, but you've managed to win games without him. I would be conservative in this standpoint. I wouldn't want to risk any re-injury or just throw him out there if his conditioning isn't right and having to match up against those guys on the outside.
Hey, Geoff, when he is ready to go full steam ahead, you got Douglas. Robinson's been great. Mills obviously is, they like him a lot. What do you anticipate the secondary kind of looking like? I mean, there's some people are like, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But obviously Darby is going to be a guy that when he comes back, he's going to be reinserted somewhere immediately.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've been thinking about it all day, and obviously no one's going to really be, in the coaching staff, they're not even prepared to deal with that kind of question just yet. Doug kind of just called it, you know, a real good problem to have today. But here's where I'm at on it. When Darby comes back, you have the option of starting either Jalen Mills or Rasul Douglas. And what's going to happen is, you know, first, Jim is going to be able to do a lot more defensively because right now he's got both those guys playing a lot of off coverage, and they give up a lot of underneath stuff. They've been able to survive without it, but with Darby, Jim will have a guy who can just take out a wide receiver, play a little bit more press man, and that'll let Jim be more aggressive. But by the same token, it means that Jalen Mills, who, if you remember, was targeted a lot the first 2 weeks, especially when Darby was on the field there against Washington, if you move him over, he's going to get targeted a ton. He's going to get, especially with Darby on this side. If you start Rasul Douglas, he's going to get targeted a ton. So you kind of have to weigh the difference between, well, what do I get out of Mills and what do I get out of Douglas? I think they both have 2 interceptions, but if you look at Douglas, his interceptions are more the kind that came at West Virginia, jumper out, get the ball. I thought he's done a nice job like that. And I'm not trying to take credit away from Mills, but his 2 interceptions, you know, the one against Washington, which was not even intended for his guy, it just flew over the head and he caught it in the end zone. And then kind of a similar on Thursday night where the ball is kind of in the air because Newton got hit when he threw and it kind of lands in his hands. I think because I view Rasul Douglas as a future outside corner, and I don't know how they're going to work that out with Darby and Sidney Jones and Douglas or whatever. But I think I would tend to go with Rasul, as long as he continues to, play a good game here this week if he plays, and kind of get this kid's confidence going, because I think he's playing fairly well. He's grabby. He commits PIs sometimes, but you know what? So does Jalen Mills. So I kind of would go to the guy who I think is a little bit more of a playmaker, knowing that the ball's going to be getting thrown in his direction an awful lot.
So, Geoff, would you say this injury to Darby was maybe a blessing in disguise by giving the Eagles depth more of a chance to get on the field and get some major reps? Because there's no reps like game reps, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think it's I don't know if I'd call it a blessing in disguise. I think it's really really nice of the guys like Patrick Robinson and even Mills and Douglas to kind of step up when called on. And certainly if there's another injury in the future, Pete, then that those guys can play and step in, and the Eagles have won games. So I guess in that regard, yeah, you kind of get two guys tested, a little bit more battle tested for 4 or 5 weeks here before Darby comes back.
Geoff Mosher on with us as we talk Eagles football, and they get ready for the Washington Redskins on Monday Night Football. And, Geoff, I know that the Eagles coming off that big win over Carolina, and what's the loss of Maragos mean to them? That was something at the end of the game. You saw him go off. It took a couple days till they figured out that they were going to be without Chris Maragos, but that news comes out today. What's the loss of a Chris Maragos mean to their special teams unit?
First of all, isn't it just? It seems like the Eagles cannot get out of, for all that's gone right for them this year. It's like they can't get out of a game without losing a starter. Whether it's for many games or just a season. I mean, you talk about Darby, you talk about Smallwood, you talk about Fletcher Cox for a couple of games. Obviously, Darren Sproles, and now Maragos, who is no doubt about it their best special teams player. I mean, that's why he's on the. That's why he's here, and that's why the special teams has been very good. Not the only reason, but. They lost some guys on special teams in the offseason, including Brian Brayman. So Maragos plays a really important role. I don't know who necessarily steps in and fills that, but they do have some good guys who play well on special teams anyway, like Trey Burton, like Grugier Hill, and if I pronounce that correctly, I hope Grugier Hill, something like that. So
it sounded good to me.
Yeah, no doubt. But I mean, you're going to face good teams and good returners, and I can't say it's not a loss. It's going to. I'm sure it'll be felt at some point.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Geoff, about because we laughed yesterday about they played 2 games without Fletcher, and then a game and a half without Jordan Hicks, and they haven't had Darby since week 1. You can make an argument that at each line of defense that's their best player. Cox on the line, Hicks at linebacker, and Darby in the secondary. A lot of teams
I'm sorry, you didn't have Lane Johnson last game. He's one of your, if not your best offensive lineman, and then obviously Sproles is your best running back and returner.
And the funny part is, you just said Sproles, and I think people almost have forgotten that he's out for the year. You know what I mean? I mean, that just shows. Yeah. I mean, is that a credit to Howie with the depth? I mean, what did Doug? I know he was kind of asked today about how the team has been able to move on past all these injuries. Is that a credit to Howie and Joe Douglas, the front office here? Do you got to point in that direction?
I certainly think it is, Mike. I mean, some of it's a little bit just fortunate. Like, Jake Elliott, great signing. Who would have thought he would make this many kicks of 50 or more yards, including a 61-yarder, right? Some of that is a little bit fortunate, but you definitely applaud the scouting effort to say, hey, this guy was a drafted kicker. He didn't make his team. He's got a big leg out of Memphis. He's probably a better option, because a lot of teams just go look for kickers on the scrap heap, right? They bring in those veterans and try to roll with it. So I do applaud Howie and Joe. And another area where I give them a lot of credit, and this is one area that a lot of people, I think, misunderstood their intentions. I supported it wholeheartedly from the start, was the 1-year deal for veterans, guys like Chris Long, guys like Chance Warmack, guys like Patrick Robinson, who really has turned it around. I think instead of signing guys to 2- and 3-year deals and then realizing they're washed up when you have to start them, like the McKelvins or the Bradley Fletchers or the Carey Williams, I thought they did a really good job of getting guys on 1-year deals, knowing that they may have to start. You don't know how your young talent, your drafted kids, your second-year kids are going to play. But if these young kids play well, then these other guys like Chris Long can come in and fill a role. And Chris Long has been an unbelievable part of their third-down defense. He is, their third-down defensive end. He's in on, I guess, 75% or more of their third downs, and he's done an excellent job of it.
Yeah, Geoff, since you mentioned Chris Long, I want to talk about him a little bit more, what a guy like that maybe brings to the locker room as well. We see what he brings on the field. He does feel like he's an underrated part of the team's success so far.
Chris Long you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. I think he has been tremendous. I think he has been a great leader. I think there was an intent, guys, on building this team the right way and putting the right players on the field. Joe Douglas comes from Baltimore. Ozzie Newsome over there always talked about playing like a Raven and building his roster around guys who are going to be able to withstand those cold temperatures in December, play championship ball, play tough, play like a Raven. And I think that needed to be a similar identity for Philadelphia, back to like the 2000s and Jim Johnson's defense. I think that had been lost here with some of their free agent signings, guys who play tough and hard-nosed, and he's certainly one of them. You know, like Garrett Blunt comes from New England. They've got championships. They play in cold weather. Alshon Jeffrey has played in cold weather in Chicago. I totally believe that their philosophy in the offseason was to bring in certain types of free agents who could, quote-unquote, be like Eagles. The Eagles that, you know, played early in Jim Johnson's day or even Buddy Ryan's day, to bring that smash-mouth, hard-nosed, cold-weather football back for this team to compete when the calendar turned to December.
Geoff Mosher is with us here, and you can check him out on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL. He covers the Eagles now for FanRag Sports. And one of the things you wrote about is the Jim Schwartz and the defensive line combinations and why they're doing so well. And you mentioned Chris Long, but a guy like Derek Barnett, who you would assume is going to continue to get better and better as the year goes on and have more and more of an impact. But Vinny Curry has seemingly gotten better this year. Graham is always there. Jernigan, I think, has really been such a great addition. But the Jim Schwartz defensive line is really one of the huge keys to this season so far.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. I did write a story about that today, and I went through, because I was kind of curious. There have been so many different DL formations throughout the year. I went through and tried to find a pattern of which one. So I went through all the games and the all 22 and looked at it. And especially over the past 4 games, what I noticed is that about 60 to 75% of the time, depending on, you know, the matchup, he is going with a 4-man line that has Chris Long and Derek Barnett on the outside, and then Brandon Graham moving inside next to usually Fletcher Cox, but when he was hurt, then it was Tim Jernigan. And that's been his key 4-man line. And you guys know that Schwartz doesn't blitz a whole lot. So he really relies on those 4 guys. And I think that's really interesting because he went into the year, as you mentioned, with guys like Tim Jernigan, who can rush the passer, a guy like Vinny Curry, who signed that big contract and was supposed to really fit this system well. But that is the 4-man line that is most commonly out there on third down. And Cam Newton threw 3 picks Thursday, right? All 3 times, that was the 4-man line combination. And on 2 of the 3, Jim didn't blitz. So Fletcher Cox got his hands on one, and Barnett hit him on the other one, causing those picks. So it's nice to see. You got the veteran Chris Long, that's what he's brought in for. You got your rookie Derek Barnett, who you don't hear his name talked about a lot, and I don't think people realize he's been out there that much on third down, and he really is making a difference. Even if they're not getting sacks, guys, because they're not ranked high in sacks, they're actually like middle of the pack on that. They are getting a lot of pressure, and they're making quarterbacks throw the ball really quickly. And Brandon Graham, I think, has done an extraordinary job moving inside there and beating guards and centers to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and you know what else helps, Geoff, is the linebacker play. When you have Bradham and Hicks and Kendricks, who had 17 tackles, but when you get pressure and there's the dump-off, that those guys make the tackle underneath. What happens in this league now is you dump off, running backs make guys miss, and they get big yards. When you can tackle and not allow guys to make you miss, that's a huge difference maker in today's game.
Yeah, and Jim talked about that, why he plays so much off coverage and the ability, you know, for his corners, his safeties, and his linebackers, you mentioned, to make sure that they swarm. You know the quarterback can throw that ball 3 to 7 yards, maybe short of the sticks, and try to get, you know, yards after the catch to pick up the first down. So, well, that's how the NFL is a lot now. Yeah. But those guys have been excellent and fundamentally sound in making tackles.
Geoff, there was a period of time where when Eagles fans heard the phrase wide 9, they'd scream and run in horror. But how much do you attribute the Eagles' defensive success to the players actually understanding how to play the wide 9 and Jim Schwartz putting them in the right position? Like, Washburn never seemed to get it, but Schwartz not only knows how to coach this defense, but he knows how to put them in the right position to
succeed.
The
word wide 9 got Washburn run out of town.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, there was always a problem there between the marriage of personnel and scheme. I mean, you had 2 defensive ends in Babin, and really more Babin than Trent Cole, but Babin had no interest in playing the run. So that was a problem. And then, when you play the run like that, when you have to have linebackers, or if you're in nickel a lot, you have to have your safety be able to come up and make a tackle in the gap that's being vacated by the defensive end getting upfield. And Kurt Coleman, God bless his soul, he's just not meant to play behind a defense like that. He's just not big enough. Everybody remembers Trent Richardson just burying his head into the guy and barreling him back in the season opener in 2011, something like that. So now you've got guys like Malcolm Jenkins and McLeod who are known for being big hitters who can step up in that hole, and Bradham who played in the defense in Buffalo. So knowing the defense, understanding the gap assignments, and having, big guys who can make tackles and Kendricks is getting better at that too, has been very, very important for behind that defense. And also, Jim doesn't play it, Jim plays it selectively. He plays it, obviously on pass rushing downs. He doesn't have these guys all the way out on first and second down a lot like Washburn did.
Geoff Mosher, every Thursday here, we look at the Eagles as they get ready for the Redskins. Follow him on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL, and check out his stuff at FanRag Sports. He writes a piece about the Eagles saying it's way too early for any bold declarations, but is there a team right now that you, Geoff Mosher, see better than this 53-man roster?
No, I mean, I definitely think, the Atlantas and the Seattles of the NFL are still very good and could give the Eagles a good game. I think Washington can give the Eagles – it's like this. I feel like the Eagles can hang with anybody and beat pretty much anybody, but I'm also at the level where when they play a good team, maybe if they have to go on the road especially, I wouldn't just, say, hey, odds are that they're definitely winning that game either. So I think, it is a little bit too early, but certainly you buy a lot of currency when you start off 5-1 and you're 2-0 in the division already, and potentially 3-0 and 4-0 in the conference, or 5-0 if they beat Washington. So that really does help for the playoff chase.
And real quick on that, we talked about this yesterday and the day before. Really, that this is almost, I don't want to say a knockout blow, but a standing 8 here. If you can beat Washington, you're 2 up and have beaten them twice. So you're really putting Washington in a tough spot if you beat them on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if you win, you're not only you've already probably knocked out the Giants. I mean, maybe the Giants can climb back in, but that would be a miracle if you ask me. So if you can knock the Redskins out and knowing that the Giants are pretty much knocked out, it becomes you and Dallas, and then you never know what happens with the Zeke suspension. But, yeah, it's nice to eliminate two out of the 3 before Thanksgiving even starts.
All right, Geoff Mosher here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Mosher, it's always good to catch up, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Talk next week, guys. Take care.